I'm Dr. Jaime Romo. I've identified in the past as a lot of things, as a teacher, as a parent, as a helper. More and more, I identify as a healer. And just like to share today, this is the first of 3 presentations around the big questions in life. One is, who are we? Second is, what do we want? And the third is, what's our purpose? And so today I'll focus a little bit on the who are we part and this title of recovery time. What is it they're recovering from? And is there actually a process through, not just to get to be a survivor, but to really grow and be our best self regardless of our background? And I want to start with a few quotes. One is about who are we physically. There's a quote by Alan Lightman. It says, "The material of the doomed and stars and the material of my doomed body are actually the same material, literally the same atoms. It's astonishing, true, but if I could attach a small tag to each of the atoms in my body and travel with them backwards in time, I would find that those atoms originated in particular stars in the sky, those exact atoms." So science is telling us that there's a connection between us and the whole universe through time. And that's amazing. There's another quote by James Baldwin that talks about who we are emotionally, till we get to our deeper self. He says, "Any real change implies the breakup of the world as one has always known it, the loss of all that gave one an identity, the end of safety." And that's a huge thing, because who wants to let go of what feels safe? But I think he's saying that as part of our development to be fully human, we have to let go of past things, let go of our attachments to what we thought we were, to activities or titles or possessions and positions. And the third quote to me relates to who we are spiritually. It's a theologian named Teilhard de Chardin. And he says, more or less, we think we're human beings having a spiritual experience, but we're really spiritual beings having a human experience. And to me, that's the most powerful one, because it flips everything. Knowing that we're more than our bodies, we're more than our experiences and how we interpret them, that there's something that goes through us that is a spark of God, or a spark of the infinite, even that connects us to what some people call the God particle. Right? That part in the inner part of every subatomic particle, that if it weren't there, things would collapse. There's something amazing about who we are. And so I just want to share a little bit about my journey and a little bit of a map for going through this breakdown or loss of identity to a spiritual identity. And then we'll have some questions and discussion later. But I'd recommend this little activity for you anytime to think about your life and come up with 6 words that describe it. And so my life in 6 words are hurting, fleeing, raging, healing, helping, and flowing. And so I grew up in Northeast LA, family of 6 kids, violent alcoholic father who had a segregated education, worked for the railroad his whole life. We lived in terror a lot of times, and school was my outlet, my safe place. And if you can see the photos, I have a picture of my grandparents, on both sides came from Mexico during the revolution. When the grandparents that I lived with, the grandparent built the front house and the back house, so we lived in the back house. He was a cement finisher. He was a violent alcoholic. My grandmother gave me this picture of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and she was always praying. She was blind, but she was always praying. And I had this deep sense of spiritual connection, and a sense of maybe that somehow there's something bigger that will help get me out of this misery. Went to a Catholic school, learned, played soccer. I loved that growing up. And these were outlets, right? Ways to channel my energy. And I didn't realize the kind of hurt and anger and rage that I was carrying. And again, if you can see the pictures, you see me at different stages, maybe around 7th grade, 9th grade in high school, where my look begins to change a little bit. It's a picture of me and my brothers and sisters, and one of me and a priest. We grew up Catholic identity, safe place was church. I was kind of adopted by the Monsignor, and then later groomed and sexually abused by him and another person in the diocese, all of which was kind of buried. And I channeled the rage that I was carrying, not just from the poverty and racism and violence in the home and the abuse, into academics and sports. And so I killed people on the soccer field. I went to a private high school. I did well there. I was super competitive, all the time suppressing anything that was painful. I went to Stanford, got lost in this wild community. You can see the photo, it's me and the fraternity that I joined, just wild and kind of fleeing. I have this part of my life would be, I think, fleeing. And all the time, regardless of achievement, feeling a sense of shame and abandoning myself. After graduation, I had a powerful conversion experience, a series of really powerful events that I felt like God was calling me, and I resisted the idea that I was going to go to the seminary and be a priest. Again, all this time disconnected from my past trauma and wound, but this big conversion experience, all of a sudden I said, okay, this is the right place. So I went there, a huge shift from where I was, just months before, into this isolated monastic time. I was this spiritually disconnected monk. It was a perfect place for me. I was blissed out. Forgot all the worries and the pains of the past. Got very involved in the Cursillo community. Was very involved in church. And then one time we had a picnic and my dad popped a beer can and this rage flushed through me. I thought I was going to kill him. And I realized I wasn't disconnected from all that emotional stuff. So I started working on that, ACA and other support groups. Got married, lived in community for a bit, started raising a family, got more degrees, got my master's from UCLA, became assistant principal in schools, got my doctorate at USD in educational leadership, all the time channeling this rage at the ways that people have been hurt and betrayed in systems that are there to protect them. So my mission was then to help people through schools, and led international conferences, and all this time was really still abandoning myself, being abusive to myself, and wrapped in shame, because that's really what happened growing up. I was kind of lost in the family. I was a good kid, good student, so I was pretty much abandoned. And then I was abused, I was wrapped in shame. And so naturally, that's what I internalized and did to myself through achievement, through hard work, through trying to be perfect. And then, it's kind of a peak in my professional life. Professor, things are going well, dealt with a lot of painful issues. And I was on the East Coast for an educational conference for professors who worked at Catholic universities. And the Boston clergy scandal started hitting the papers. And all of a sudden, I started feeling this kind of irritation. We weren't talking about social justice issues in the conference. And there's all this stuff in the news, and no one was talking about that. And it was like an oil spill. Like all of a sudden this thing opened up, and I couldn't stop the flow of memories, the flood of rage. I figured that I was in a good position to help other people, so I led support groups. I got involved in this group called the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. And I did news appearances, and I wrote letters to the diocese, and I was very visible. And eventually, I was just so feeling betrayed and continued to be burning with this passion. I ended up actually projecting these giant images on the Cathedral of LA, the Cathedral of San Diego, saying, like this one with the child replicating kind of image of Jesus, saying, if anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to lose faith, better for that person to have a millstone put around their neck and thrown into the sea. I mean, taking the scripture to say, this is what people who have been entrusted to protect kids have done. And somebody has to take back this stuff that's killing them. I actually was diagnosed with PTSD after a few years of just trying to help other people and deal with all this hostility of bringing up this unspeakable topic. I couldn't remember my students' names. I couldn't remember stuff that I had written, and I had written a lot. I was doing well. And I connected with others. I started to use my experience to say, my experience isn't isolated, and it's part of a system. And so I made my experience an academic study. I wrote academic articles about it in the middle of the time I was protesting. But all that became too much for a while. I needed to take a leave, and during that time, I started to actually take care of myself. And I was part of this retreat at the Chopra Center called Healing the Heart. And that helped us to allow whatever shame and pain to come up and to acknowledge it and to realize, as I mentioned before, things have happened to us, but then we've internalized it and now we're doing it to others. So that was a huge turnaround for me. I wrote a workbook, which I am making available through lived experiences for anybody who would like to use it. I'll talk a little bit about that as part of the recovery time. But turning this anger, this rage into action was through my scholarship, through my writing. It was by connecting with others in relationships, people who had their own pain, had their own shame, and had done some healing work. Because too often, I was just recycling pain with other people who had similar experiences. And I got connected with others who were helpers. If you remember years ago, Oprah had this show called 200 Men, and she invited people from all over the country who had experienced sexual abuse to break the silence, to say this is something that everybody experiences. I mean, sexual abuse is a terrible thing to talk about for anybody, and it's so pervasive. Easy to say 25% of the population has experienced that. So with other people, we started to do some work and learn about trauma, and I became more of a consultant and started actually working with churches and other groups to teach. All the time, my deep sense of spiritual self, which at one point felt gone, was rebuilding in a new way. And so that James Baldwin quote about losing whatever we had, our sense of self, is necessary if we're going to grow. And so this healing time continued by using my experience to help others, to continue to learn, and then leading seminars, writing, doing creative work. I wrote a novel that I never finished or published, but it was a good experience just to make my experience tell a story, of past and present and future. And so I left the university 12 years ago and spent time to rebuild my family. After connecting with a different church, the UCC, United Church of Christ, I actually became a minister for healing and healthy environments because I had some expertise about organizational change. I got my doctorate in educational leadership. We studied the collective unconscious and group dynamics. And then a registered sex offender showed up in that church. And the group flipped out because a lot of people had been betrayed and had never had support or space to acknowledge that. And here was this person who's saying, I've done my time, I want to be accountable, and I want to be connected. So we went through that process together. That led into that ministry. And then I learned a lot about trauma and I'm a certified traumatic incident reduction facilitator, and soon I'll be a trainer. It's a goal I have in the near future to get that certification so I can train lots of people who don't need to be therapists, don't need to be psychologists, psychiatrists, to deal with the trauma that impacts how we see ourselves and the world, and then our health as well. And in the next presentation, what do we want? I'll be talking more about the trauma network and the patterns of how we absorb and how it's toxic, and then how we can heal. So my life now is more, I think, in this flowing place, and it's not linear. I mean, there are times where I can feel like I'm surviving again. But today, I'm a hospice chaplain. I sit with people and families who are dealing with end of this life experience and finding connection and meaning and purpose. And one of my favorite expressions is a New Zealand community organizer who says, if you're here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you're here because your liberation is bound up in mine, then let's work together. So that's, in a sense, what I do as a spiritual companion, as a spiritual midwife, helping people to move from one sense of self to another. I now direct conferences from the A.K. Rice Institute for the Study of Social Systems. I'm directing one in February. It's going to be online, where we're going to study as activists how to use our spiritual connections to work differently, because we know we have a lot of social issues to deal with besides the pandemic. We have racial injustice, we have climate change, we have economic disparity, we have so much that is wrong, and we need a different way to work together. And all of that is a spiritual process. It's going to be actually called Activism as a Spiritual Process, a Latinx-led leadership experience. And I'm president of a group called the Child-Friendly Faith Project. And it's not a great name, we're going to change that, but we look at policies and practices that right now are protected, that hurt kids. And so in short, I have lived through this process that, for me, kind of falls into a map. And if you see the visual on one corner, you can imagine this for yourself. On one side is familiar, and the other side is unfamiliar. The bottom is easy, the top is difficult. And so they're kind of these four windows. The bottom, familiar and easy, that's where I grew up with. Things were prescribed. Church told me how to be. The well, the water, source of life, source of spirit, was fixed. The bad thing about being in a castle like that is that some people are in the dungeon. The second area is unfamiliar but easy. So that's tourism. When I left formally my involvement with church, I felt maybe freer and so on. But that's not deep water. Deep water is unfamiliar and difficult. And that's where James Baldwin is saying we have to lose ourselves. And from that place, we can do difficult things that become familiar. The workbook talks about stages. They're not pure linear, but victims and survivors, and survivor thrivers and then thrivers. Other people have these individual barometers where we talk about from feeling powerless and depressed up to anger. That might relate to victims. Blame and worry and doubt to frustration, that might relate to survivors. Pessimism up to positive, that might be survivor thriver, and then being happy, flowing with life would be thriver. And there are different other maps that people can use as well, from being in crisis to thriving. So I'll just leave you with two quick stories. One is Portia Nelson, Life in 5 Days. One is day one, person walks the sidewalk, there's a huge hole in the sidewalk, person doesn't see it, they fall in, they're upset, they didn't know it was there, it takes them forever to get out. Day two, person walks down the same sidewalk, same hole, they know it's there, they pretend it's not there, they fall in, they still get mad and blame somebody else, get out a little bit quicker. Day three, same sidewalk, person knows it's there, they try to walk around, They fall in, but this time they know it's their fault and they get out real quickly. Day 4, person walks around the hole. Day 5, person goes down another path. So I'm saying there is a process when people go through difficult things. Next time I'll talk more about the details, but just know that just like being in an emergency room, there are times where we all need help from other people, and then we need some help as we become a little bit more independent, and then we become responsible for our own health, and then we can be fully healthy. So today, a brief review on, who are we? We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And there is time for recovery of our deepest self, recovery on a day-to-day basis. The next time we'll talk about what are we recovering from. So thank you for your work to help others, and thank you for your healing presence.
This is Premas, the new online show brought to you by Lived Experiences. We will be bringing experts in various fields to share their experience and knowledge with you, with the hopes of you gaining more value from the presentations. Today we have Dr. Jaime Romo, who is the Hospice Chaplain at Kaiser Permanente. Dr. Jaime Romo, thank you so much for joining us and taking your time to share your information and your knowledge with us.
Thanks.
I appreciate you very much for that.
Welcome.
The presentation that you shared with us, could you give us maybe a quick summary highlight or what the idea is behind it and why it is that you wanted to share that with the audience?
Sure. I think my experience, like so many, a lot of people in healthcare, in fact, there's studies about them, go into helping professions because they've had some things happen to them that they didn't want anybody else to have to experience. And so a lot of times we're not in control of things that happen to us and where we're born and who we're with and so on. But we do have control over what we do with that. And so that's been not where I thought I was going to end up, growing up or even as a professional. But once I really needed to take responsibility for my whole life, things that I wasn't in control of and then things at present, then it just seemed to be the only thing, to make sense of my experiences is to teach, to share. And in that, there's the story of the wounded healer, the archetype of Chiron, right, who is hit by a poison arrow, and because he's a god, he's going to live forever, and he's suffering eternally. And then notices at some point that other people, or other gods, are suffering. And in exploring and in trying to be some help, finds out that he's also benefiting. And so there's this interdependence in the healing, and independence of our learning. So it's not what we give, but what we share. So it's turned into this, as a hospice chaplain and other things that I'm doing.
Yeah, that's great. And you touched on the idea of coming to a point where you realize, I guess, that, or you recognize that there's an issue or that there's trauma or that there's rage in your specific example. Do you think, or in your experience, do you see that some people go through life maybe not even recognizing it and thinking, like you said at some point, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the church was telling you and everyone else how to be, how to act maybe. At what point does somebody just come to that realization that something's wrong and they've got to try to make a change and try to, I guess, get closer to happiness? Yeah,
change is difficult for anybody. And so, we can get acclimated and used to even a real lousy life, destructive relationships and so on. And so for me, I'm no different. I thought I was going in one direction, and the pain had to stop me. There's a theologian, a writer named Richard Rohr, the Franciscan, and he says basically, spirituality is basically how we deal with our pain. And I think a lot of times, for me and many people, it takes something that isn't working anymore, that is intolerable, that forces us to stop, to look at what's there and to do something with it, and as needed, maybe change direction. So for me, I mentioned I had PTSD at one point. I thought I could smart my way through whatever traumas I had, you know, and just, you know, power through whatever things that were difficult. And I think a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
So I think if people are wiser, they'll be more proactive rather than, you know, letting things pile up and, you know, go into a tailspin.
At what point do you think people realize, or what age range maybe even, do you think people realize that their normal that they grew up with as a child is not a healthy normal? Because that to me seems like there's people that are just dealing with these inner challenges and they just think it's normal. I feel, you know.
Sure. I know that when people have deep trauma, deep kinds of abuse, there's often a lag of 20, 30 years when that happens, where people notice, you know, that they've got patterns in their life that they don't like, or they realize that they're not the only one because other people are now sharing in some way. And there are more and more examples of that. And the whole Me Too movement and things like that have opened up a lot of people's self-awareness and ability then to let go of a lot of the shame. So there's normally a pretty big lag of time before we actually look back. Because a lot of times, I mean, when we're in the middle of something, the victims, we're in the midst of that. And then as time goes on, we may be like survivors, or we get through, we have coping mechanisms, but we're often still kind of in the here and then. And so I guess until that stops working, or we have a spark, something sparks us. For me, it was what was in the news.
Yeah, but you were at the conference. And,
So everybody's got a different schedule, and there's no one way that everybody's gonna, you know, come to that kind of learning, but it's necessary.
Yeah, I like how you repeatedly talked about connecting with others, and then at one point you even talked about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but something regarding our molecules being part of, if you can actually trace them back, they can be part of some star somewhere in the universe, right? And so we don't actually, I guess we don't actually become born and die, so to speak. It's like we're just constantly evolving and changing. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, I referenced the quote about the star dust, you know, can be located in us. I think it's the element argon. I may be wrong, but it has this amazing half-life. So the idea that we breathe in and breathe out molecules, and some of those have such a long half-life that without, you know, we're sharing molecules that either Jesus or Hitler or Mother Teresa or Gandhi or you know, we have this shared connection. And that opens up a different way of thinking about, you know, kind of who we are. And you know, now that I'm in my role as a hospice chaplain, I really appreciate that when we think about that, we realize, you know, it's not, life and death are not opposites. I mean, birth and death are opposites. And so life is life. And we have this sense of connection. I know in October, you know, some people celebrate the Dia de los Muertos, and others, you know, All Saints and All Souls, the idea that there's still this connection. And so some traditions have this idea of resurrection. You know, for some that may be, for a parent and a child, you know, so they may say, oh my gosh, I see your mother or father in you. I mean, there's so many ways that we go on beyond our physical experience.
That's awesome. I always love the idea of considering that we're all part of one. You know, we're individuals, but we're also part of one, I think. And you talked about, you know, if someone were to come to me and say, I want to help you heal, that's not as significant as, say, understanding the interdependence of both people healing together. And I recently heard something on YouTube where a gentleman was talking about us evolving to understanding our collective existence versus as individuals in different races and colors and genders and all of that stuff. Is that kind of what you meant by that, by talking about that somebody coming to ask to heal me, but not understanding that interdependence.
Yeah. I mean, we are the experts of our own experience as best we can be.
Yeah.
And the idea that someone else can tell us, how to be happy or better or whatever doesn't really resonate as deeply. And so the best we could do, I think, is be companions. Is like the idea of sounds like compadre. Right? The best we can do is share this experience that we have. And I think we are shifting from a time where we thought maybe we were separate and thought that some people were dangerous or better, and again, thinking about the universe, it's amazing that the universe had prepared the conditions somehow. I use the word prepare like it was intentional, but there's something about that we have the planet and the atmosphere that we do to even exist, and the idea that we're all in this together, the same environment, that we're all impacted by climate, and impacted by the economy and by the pandemic. I mean, so all this is like telling us more and more we are connected, like it or not. And so why shouldn't we like it?
Yeah, exactly.
Why shouldn't we recognize that and we're actually mirrors of each other. And if people kind of get into psychology, we know that we project onto others, meaning like if I think you're great and smart and I want more of what I see in you, is actually that's something in me that I'm not recognizing so much. And the reverse as well. Yeah. Like if I think somebody's an idiot or whatever, there's something actually that I'm not owning in myself. But yeah, if you're here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you're here because your liberation is bound up in mine, then let's work together. Yeah, we are interconnected.
There it goes. Yeah, I said it totally wrong. I love that. Yeah, the liberation, that's such a powerful word. I wanted to learn more about Pain Olympics. Pain Olympics.
So I think about kind of stages of healing, and victims, people who are dealing with all kinds of pain, can pretty much just see that, and then it's hard to celebrate somebody else's success or whatever. There's a really beautiful book, just an audio book I listened to, but it's called the Book of Joy, and it's the Dalai Lama talking with Desmond Tutu from South Africa, and they talk about how we're so much better off when we can actually not just have compassion for others, but celebrate others' success. And the reverse of that is it's so hard when we're in pain to celebrate someone else's success. And I know for me, being a competitive person and in a lot of pain, at different times, if somebody else shared something, it was like, you think that's something? I got a story, right? Whatever you got. That kind of is a real negative and subtractive way of living. But it comes from like, that's where I am. I'm not in a place where I'm whole enough to let you be or to appreciate.
So it's almost like when you see, kind of like you said earlier, if you see, say, negative attributes in somebody else, it's almost like you're recognizing them within you, as well as maybe being jealous of somebody else's success instead of being able to celebrate somebody else's success.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing. I mean, it doesn't just come, again, if we could think our way through it, things would be so much easier.
Yeah.
But it requires us acknowledging what's in us, and sitting with that or letting it come out to the degree where we can have some perspective and find ways to learn from it, find ways to even appreciate, who we've become because of those experiences. And that opens up, the whole world of trauma and recovery and post-traumatic growth. But we have to work with what we got, and a sign that we're not really doing that is avoiding something or fighting. fleeing those basic,
Yeah.
lizard brain things, fight, flight, or freezing, and fainting, whatever.
Mm.
But I did that, and I try not to do that now.
Now you recognize it, and you're like, wait, okay, you're doing it again. Yeah, before we got on camera, you said something about, and maybe I misunderstood, but you said something about appreciating the pain, I believe is what you said, and being able to, because you said yourself, you've gone through so many different, painful events in your life, and then getting to a point where you can actually appreciate them and understand that they created who you are today. Is that kind of what you were getting at, or correct me if I'm wrong? Yeah.
Yeah, I used to be amazed at when I heard people talk about, I'm grateful for this person who caused so much pain in my life, or this event that happened. It was, the Dalai Lama talks about that. Like he was exiled, and Mandela had that kind of deep conversion, call it, of seeing that this experience, as painful as it was, shaped him and helped him to be a different person, call it a bigger person, a person who was compassionate. And I think that is a reality, at least that's been my experience. So I've found that we're not grateful because we're happy. We're happy because we're grateful. And that means, again, recognizing whatever we've been through, reconciling it with who we want to be, and coming to some kind of acceptance. And so being present to things, accepting things, and then with that, tells us, wow, we've come a long way. So we can, that gratitude extends even for terrible things, even, to people who have done terrible things to us. Doesn't mean we excuse that or, say it didn't happen or anything, but we don't carry it in the same way at all.
You said we are happy because we're grateful, not grateful because we're happy.
Yeah.
Would that mean that you're in control of the gratitude and that'll lead to happiness? And then if you really want to be happy, gratitude is key, versus thinking, I'm going to just be or pretend to be happy maybe, and that's going to lead to gratitude. Is that? Yeah,
and that's not like anything original for me. It's just from lots of people who I think have studied people who, at the end of life, have reported, great happiness, and that's been a common thing. We can chase after happy, and that's what we do all the time. We got happy meals, I guess. Happy hours, right?
Yeah. All kinds of happy stuff.
But it's really, coming to appreciate, and to me this is spiritual work, because to me spirituality is about integration. So being present and listening without judgment, and being present to ourselves or whatever experiences, and in that finding what we are grateful for. And so as a result, we feel better, and as a result our physical health is better. We'll talk more about that in the next presentation.
No, there's two more to come. So real quick, tell me really quick about integration, and then we'll kind of sum everything up.
I found that to be the way that I best understand kind of spiritual growth and learning. I used to teach teachers, and so my world was about how do we grow? We deconstruct something and then we reconstruct it, or we construct it, we deconstruct it, we reconstruct it. When we have some kind of trauma, something that overwhelms us, something that is too difficult to process, there's a chemistry in us that kind of fragments our memories even. Certainly that was my experience for many years. I just didn't remember stuff. It was too much. It was a coping mechanism. And to be whole, it has the same root as to be healthy. It's to be healed or holy. And so that wholeness is bringing things together that may have been denied or suppressed, like our past, body, mind, spirit, past, present, future. And for those who have maybe higher levels of consciousness, just integrating, all the people and events into a place where we see that we're more than side by side, even showing respect, but that we're in solidarity.
Yeah.
But I know for me, just going through the process to integrate past into my present has really led to a deeper sense of being whole.
Nice. Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit, maybe just a little sneak peek to the next part and the third part, and then we'll talk a little bit about a workbook that's going to be available to folks and how they can maybe get their hands on that book.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So today was the first of the three big questions. They're not the only questions, but I think they're kind of tested through time. Who are we? What do we want? What's our purpose?
Mm.
And I think today I'm saying we're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Mm.
And it doesn't mean religious. There's a lot of ways that people have a sense of deep spiritual connection.
Mm.
What do we want? We want to be happy.
Exactly.
And sometimes then things get in the way. So next time we're going to talk about those things that can get in the way, and there's kind of a science to trauma, things that overwhelm us, and offer some maps or some practices or some resources in the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one, what's our purpose? I think our purpose is really to help one another.
Mm-hmm.
We're not here just for ourselves, and Desmond Tutu says, a person is a person because of other people, and with other people, and through other people.
Mm-hmm.
So we're here to help each other, and sometimes there are things that get in the way with that. And I know, part of what's huge and super important has been going on for a long time is racism, systemic racism, racial injustice, and I think it's important for everybody to take up that part of our identity and recognize that it exists, recognize that we're all in it. And again, have maybe the map or some perspectives that might help us to rethink the separateness in that area as well. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And there's a workbook that people might be able to get their hands on?
Yeah, years ago, I wrote a workbook called Healing the Sexually Abused Heart, a workbook for survivors, thrivers, and supporters. And it was geared really for people in that kind of religious maltreatment world.
Mm.
But a lot of the materials were useful for anybody.
Mm.
And I'm gifting several of those to lived experiences. Mm. And if anybody would like to have one, they can have one. It would be great if they make a donation to lived experiences to continue, this kind of program and other ways that people can be better and better helpers.
Nice, that's awesome. Well, thanks again so much. I appreciate you joining us. That's Premas, brought to you by Lived Experiences. Dr. Jaime Romo, thank you so much.
Traffic is my best friend. It's my first love, I can't pretend. It's a time where conversations start happening between the ego and the God within. Can I keep it real? Can I keep it true about my truth, about my blues, the whole damn deal? You see, job to job trying to make it. Job to job, I couldn't take another Bob trying to tell me how to live when he don't know shit. But of course he's gonna fake it and tell me hard work is how you make it. But let's be real. Let's be real. My father's skin tone, my brother's skin tone, my skin tone makes you ill. And here I am trying to defend for people who pick and choose when to let me in. I'm too white, I'm too black. God forbid I defend my mom, I'm under attack. I said I see world peace, I'm told no, come back. The world ain't ready for that. But see, I don't stop believing. My faith stays strong because the God within me tells me I'm not wrong. Can I vent? Can I plead? Can I blow off some steam about the ego and the childhood dream? You see, when you're young, what you believe you will achieve, and all I ever wanted was happiness and peace, and then you're taught to fear your light, and all your dreams are out of sight. It's fight versus flight, and see, I want to fly. Every day I want to break away, but someone's got to fight. Someone's got to be the light. Someone's got to make this fucked up world all right, and that's me, and I'll do whatever it takes to be free, you feel me? Apparently, the US of A is the place to be, but how are we going to be the land of the free when we can't even be what we want to be? The irony is killing me. The US of BS, we can't even fucking protest. This has got to be another one of God's tests. You see, I'm a dark soul. I wish otherwise. I've danced more with demons than I have with angels. I've doubted God more than I believed her, but I know I still need her. And every day I pray, save me please. Help me see the light in others that's inside of me. Let me know it's okay to be me, because can't you see That life ain't nothing but some alchemy. You take the bad, you make it gold, you never flip, you never fold, now watch me blow. Thank you.